to the county seat, but your city.
Yeah, everybody has a role in government in terms of trying to do the work of the people and keep things moving forward. But I'm happy I'm here, and I'm happy our reps are in St. Paul.
Right. So, in the past month,
A lot's happened.
yes,
Well, there's always a lot going on, but yeah, this last month seems especially active. And like in my world, we had the derecho, and you kind of get through the other side of that. You set the levy. Then we had all this stuff happening in Minnesota in regards to fraud and immigration, which of course kind of trickles down, to the city. We had the stuff going on with the cannabis license and Northern Township kind of related things. In the middle of that, you're working on YMCA and planning for summer construction projects. And, so you just basically kind of move from one thing to the next. And there hasn't been a lot of real quiet time in any recent history.
Well, normally that can be good. There's always something going on. Because if nothing's going on, your
who's
city's
working?
not moving. But
Right.
it is ongoing, so I don't know how much you can say. But what can you say about the current status of the Northern Township, City of Bemidji ordeal?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I can speak to, certain things specifically from my point of view. So, I want to be clear. I'm not speaking on behalf of the city council or an official City of Bemidji position. But, what's happened to this point is the city has requested the judge to do a reconsideration of her ruling. And that is a legal process. It's not a full-blown appeal. It's just a legal process where, in essence, you're saying there's information that's come to light since the trial ended that we would like you to consider because we think it's relevant and important to your decision. And if you reconsider it, that would be part of the process of seeing if you as a judge would reconsider a portion of your ruling. And so that could include any number of things that have happened since the trial. I read social media and the news reports like everybody else, and there's a real focus on one or two things, but there's more to it than that. And, we'll see what happens. So until that gets resolved, Northern Township has responded to that legally, and so we'll see, where that goes. So that's, the formal legal place that we're at. For me personally, one of the things that, to me was very surprising is that, we had the court order come through on Tuesday, a couple weeks ago, Tuesday afternoon. And on Friday afternoon, I received a letter requesting that Northern Township be allowed to connect from the Northern Town Board. 3 days later, additionally of which they are very well aware that the city has 60 days to consider whether or not it wanted to appeal that decision. Additionally, they not only requested to connect, they requested that that item be placed on the city council agenda for a Tuesday meeting, knowing that Monday is a holiday. So what's the rush? And the city council has voted twice on this policy already, stating very clearly that in order to receive city services, you need to be a city resident. So I think that's been pretty clearly stated. So for me to receive that letter X number of days with all of that in play, I just find that very, very interesting. And people can certainly take away from that what they'd like to. But I certainly wasn't expecting that in that period of time.
Legal fights are never quote-unquote good. It's usually bad feelings, one-sided to the other, maybe even both. Whatever happens, how important is it for both entities, whatever they end up being? We're neighbors. We still need to work together. How important is that going to be?
Well, I think if you've heard me speak through this entire process, I've been trying to keep that at the forefront. We are actually tonight scheduled to have a Rural Fire Association meeting at Northern Town Hall because that township, along with others and ours, all work in collaboration for fire service for our area. I will be there. So that's going to continue for the foreseeable future, no matter what happens. And we work together in other arenas. However, I will say I always draw a distinction between the people of Bemidji and the people of Northern Township and the leadership. I've always gotten along with the people of Northern Township. I have a lot of friends that live in Northern. I have people that work with me and with us from Northern Township. Right now, as it relates to this matter, speaking for myself personally, I have a disagreement with the leadership of Northern Township. That doesn't mean that I have a disagreement with all of Northern Township or that I'm the type of person that's going to hold a grudge or anything like that. We live in a political system that always wants villains. I mean, if you watch the State of the Union, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on,
Everyone had a villain there.
Yep.
yeah, I don't know how you walk away and feel like I'm really happy with how government works, right? Regardless of what side you're on. And everybody wants a villain. And, sometimes there's just really difficult things going on with good people on both sides of the aisle that are just trying to make the best decision they can for the people they represent. And in my world, ultimately, I'm the mayor of Bemidji. I represent the citizens of Bemidji. And that has to be my first and greatest priority because that is the office I'm elected to. Do I care about our neighbors? Absolutely, I do. Do I care about our overall community, state, country? Yes, I do. But my role is pretty clearly defined in what I swore to uphold when I was elected. And so if you take something like our sewer system, how many tens of millions of dollars have citizens of the city invested in it over this 130 plus years that the city's been a city? We just invested an additional $14 million in expanding the wastewater treatment plant, $10 million of which was bonded for. And who's responsible for those bonds?
We are.
The taxpayer of the city. That's who's responsible. So if we were going to extend sewer system service outside of the city limits, could I ever charge somebody appropriately to compensate for all of that investment and all of the risk that goes with that? Probably not. And so if I'm presented with a financial picture where I feel that the citizens of Bemidji are going to take greater financial cost and risk to help a brand new city keep their tax rate lower, not really interested in doing that. And again, I'm speaking on behalf of myself,
Right.
No one else. And so when I look at that, I go, I don't think that's economically fair to the citizens of Bemidji, and they are my number one responsibility. And I have a lot of other reasons why I think this is a bad idea, but that's why you won't see me supporting that anytime soon, and I've made that clear throughout this whole process. Now, can anyone ask you for anything they want to? Sure, but you don't have to say yes. And I think that's the struggle. And I go back to our continuing conversations through all of this. You might recall when this request first came forward, the township had not declared any intent to become a city or incorporate. And one of the concerns I shared at the time when we were discussing this was that what happens if you put the pipe in the ground and then they become a city? Now you have your pipe in the ground in another city. What is that?
How does that work?
Guess what? That's exactly what's happened. So to me, that's just reaffirmed my decision back then when I voted not to allow that to happen, because if I had, look at where we'd be as a city. And in the trial, there was a lot of evidence and information provided. I was there for almost all of it. And in that testimony, Northern Township indicated their leadership that they had been considering incorporation for a really long time. So that would tend to tell me that they were considering incorporation while they were requesting that connection as a township. That's concerning to me. And I only am stating that based on what I heard at trial. So, we've got a lot to work through. There's a lot to consider. I have a lot of thoughts about, how this is all going to work. I think there's an accountability piece to this too. In that trial, the leaders of Northern Township said to the judge, we're in a better position to provide sewer to the rest of the lake. We can get to the east side of the lake faster than the city can. Sworn testimony. They said we need to become a city so we can stabilize our property tax so that we can actually bond for the plant. So that was a huge reason for why they wanted to be a city. How do those get met by connecting to us?
There's the question.
Right.
That's why I'm not a judge.
So, like when you get into the legal stuff, that's all the stuff that you're talking about. And again, I'm always concerned about the lake. Always want what's best for Lake Bemidji because it's our shared resource. I've said it many, many times. Have to balance that against what I think is in the best interest of the citizens I've been elected to represent, as does the leaders of Northern Township. So tough stuff.
Well, it's a unique situation in my observation, just being a citizen in a town. You don't have this very often. Maybe it happens a lot in bigger towns or different parts of the country, but you don't always have a township or area becoming a town and having to deal with that whole infrastructure, and they're usually right next to an existing town. Were you able to find information from other situations at all that could help you guys, or is there really nothing there that...
Yeah, there are cities who have extended service outside their borders, and I tell you, at best, it's mixed results.
Sure.
Moose Lake, they're not very happy right now about having extended their services. They've got a rate problem over there where they can't increase the rates on their contract to keep pace with their costs like they can with their own citizens, and that hasn't turned out well for them. I talked to leaders over in Detroit Lakes and several other places, and when I spoke to folks who had done this, a lot of regret about the consequences, because you're trying to do something good for the overall community, but what's the ultimate consequence for your property taxpayers? And a lot of times it hasn't been what anybody thought, because there's always unintended consequences of what you do. And I think when you step forward and say, I want to be a city, you're taking on a whole host of obligations. And again, that goes to accountability. And the whole thing about incorporation is really interesting to me, because it doesn't require a vote of the citizens. There is no vote. That's not part of the process. So it's just simply the town board, whichever town board, saying, we believe citizens want this and we're going to move it forward. So they do, and then they ask for it, judge grants it, and then the very first thing that happens is they elect a new city council. So the people who actually hold all the power to incorporate may not be the people who actually have to deliver. So you can make all kinds of promises as you're going through the incorporation process, but you may not even be the people sitting in the seats who have to deliver. And then there was no vote. So it all gets really interesting, because if an incorporation goes bad, and there are stories of that, like the city of Now Then, Minnesota, that they're kind of interesting to look up. They're kind of regretting their incorporation decision. Well, from an accountability standpoint, if it goes bad, who's responsible? There was no citizen vote. The city council that's seated may not be the folks that actually voted to incorporate. It's just a really interesting process.
Wasn't Now Then like a trailer park in the cities?
Yeah, I don't think it was. It's in the metro. I don't know all of the history.
I think it was a trailer park.
Yeah, I don't know the whole history.
And they went to become their own city.
Yeah. Oh. And their tax rates went insane.
Yeah. Do you know what the percentage of cost to run a wastewater treatment facility is to the monthly bill that the residents get?
I would say that
I'm guessing it's not 100%.
Yeah, and again, when you talk about cost, maybe the service cost, but again, you have to stick a lot of money into an infrastructure to even get it to exist. And then if you have any major catastrophe, you'd have to bond. I mean, if tomorrow we had a huge issue with our septic system, we'd have to go bond for a few $1 million, let's say, to fix it. You're not going to immediately be able to pass all of that on to somebody who's getting service on a contract. And what's even more dangerous about that is the people who have a contract with you, you've made promises to them. So if you had an issue with your septic system, those people on contract could actually sue you for non-delivery of service while you're bonding with your taxpayers to try to solve the problem. How do you totally handle that risk?
Wow.
So this is my point. When I say there's cities who regret it and have gotten themselves in trouble, it's because the unlikely things, the things nobody thought was ever going to happen. You know, and that's why it's poor city policy, and that's why you don't see very many cities doing it, because there's just so much risk associated with it that go far beyond just the, hey, let's put some pipe in the ground. And it's the same reason why you don't see hundreds of townships incorporate, because there's risks to becoming a city and there's obligations that come with it. If you could just take a township and turn it into a city and you wouldn't have any increase in taxes, nothing would change and everything
Everybody
would be
do
the
it.
same. Wouldn't everybody be
Right.
doing it? So why isn't everybody doing it?
Because there's a lot more to it.
That's right. And so these are all the questions that, come up when you're in the middle of all of this. And again, I'm sharing my information from a particular point of view, and I don't hide that. And that's why I started this conversation by saying, everybody's looking for a villain. We have a point of view as a city. It's been expressed. I have a point of view as mayor. I've expressed it. The Northern Town Board has a point of view. And I don't think anybody is here intentionally trying to do harm to anybody. We just have different points of view about a difficult situation. And, I could carry that forward and talk about J.W. Smith.
Right.
Okay, there's another example of something that is in the middle of our community for which there's different points of view. And I've had a number of conversations in the last several days with Chairman Todd Haugen. I've known Todd for years. Mm-hmm. He's a good guy.
Yep.
He's trying to do what he knows to be the right thing. On this particular issue, we don't necessarily agree, but that doesn't suddenly make him a bad person. So, to try to work through these things as a community, whether it's sewer, whether it's a school, whatever it is, you just have to maintain your relationships, keep your head about you, try to represent the people that you've been elected to, do the best job you know how to do, and move on to the next thing, because we started this conversation with all of the stuff that's been going on, right? I mean, we just had Representative Duran on. There are things he and I agree on. There are things we don't agree on. Neither one of us has to be the villain for that to happen.
Right.
Anything fun?
YMCA. Yeah, I mean, when you see, that project moving forward and you see the dollars continue to increase that are getting pledged, and you see the activity that's going on and spring's right around the corner, that's great. I was over at the Nielsen Fieldhouse seeing that renovation, and man, that group, the BISC, the Bemidji Indoor Sports Commission, they're doing a great job over there. That's going to be another great resource for the youth in our community. Got to deliver the State of the City address and just give genuine thanks to so many of the city departments that were involved in storm response and recovery. I know we got more to do here with replanting and all of this. So there's lots of good stuff going on. Sometimes you get to come here and talk about that. Sometimes you got to come here and talk about the not so fun stuff.
Got to wade through a lot of murky waters to get to the good stuff.
Well, that's life, right? You got to take the good with the bad. Keep coming back. That's the thing. You got to have tenacity. You just got to keep coming back.
Perfect.
You come back anytime you'd like.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And maybe next time we can talk about something a little more fun.
Right.
Right?
Fun city stuff.
Yeah, appreciate it.